Hey all, Glenn Kirschner here. Please enjoy this video on the Political Voices Network.
Because in honor of your tweet, fine American that you are, you said Matt Gaetz is out. Now we brace to see who Trump next names a possible attorney general. But to be clear, this is the second loss for Trump after Rick Scott, Trump's pick for Senate Majority Leader, was rejected by Senate Republicans. Thank you. I will take every win we can get, Glenn, and this is why we should not feel powerless, right?
No, and I continue to try to highlight what I call the points of light. Now, there's lots of darkness and there's more darkness to come. But, Steph, there are points of light. And I never in a million years thought I would talk about Senate Republicans being one of those points of light. But, listen, they have twice rejected Donald Trump right out of the blocks. Donald Trump wanted Rick Scott as Senate Majority Leader. They said, "Oh, heck no!" And he came in dead last in a three-man, air quotes, race. Right? Then he puts Matt Gaetz up as Attorney General, and there were behind the scenes, maybe anonymous, maybe off the record, as many as 30 Republican senators who were like, "Oh, heck no!
Oh, hell no!
That's two direct losses out of the blocks for Donald
Trump. 2 weeks after the election.
Senate Republicans, right?
Yeah.
Well, listen, now they've been reelected, so maybe they're less concerned about alienating Donald Trump's base and more concerned about protecting their own dang constituents.
Yeah. You said it in this tweet, the light will come again. We're going to Gloria Estefan coming out of the dark. Write it down. It's going to be our new opening. In whatever, a couple years, 4 years, something. Okay, Glenn.
Isn't that a little bit downcast?
Let's talk about this. Clearly, this report, I'm sure, is damaging AF. Or they would have released it. I mean, clearly it was either about to be released. Scott Dworkin said someone still needs to leak the Gaetz report so we can see every hideous thing Republicans tried to cover up. I mean, talk about egg on your face. Very expensive eggs.
Very expensive eggs.
That, they went to bat for, alleged sex trafficker rapist. Like, they went to bat for him, Right. So your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I hope we see the report, too, because it's kind of a little bit of governmental insanity that you have an institution of government that has all of this allegedly damning evidence about misconduct by a member of Congress who was nominated to be AG, who may very well land in a position in the Trump administration in the future. And yet the House of Representatives is going to bury that from the American people and continue to pull the wool over the eyes of the American people about one of their own government officials and why he's disqualified from, serving anybody and being installed in any position. That, to me, is just like governmental obscenity.
Yeah, no, agreed. And can I just say, as you know, I got off the Merrick Garland train quite some time ago. But our friend Dino Badala said, as you hear all the evidence about Matt Gaetz and ask why wasn't Gaetz criminally charged by the DOJ, the answer is Merrick Garland. Again, Garland is the worst AG in our lifetime. John Fugelsang said Matt Gaetz has now removed more criminal insurrectionists from Congress in one day than Merrick Garland did in 4 years. I've heard all I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt as long as I could, but oh my God, the fact that he prosecuted Hunter Biden for stuff people never get prosecuted for. I don't know. I understand. I've heard the things like, witnesses, but as you always say, Glenn, in a criminal trial, it's not generally Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts that testify against crooks, right?
Yeah. It actually, looking back, does feel like there were political calculations potentially going on. I'm not going to accuse the Department of Justice of that, but when we look back in recent years, Steph, they prosecuted Democrat Senator Bob Menendez, the Democrat son of a Democrat President, Hunter Biden. They've indicted Democrat Representative Henry Cuellar out in Texas. They indicted a Democrat mayor of New York City. And yet how many Republicans, including those Republicans who asked for pardons because they knew they'd committed crimes on and around January 6th, and they wanted to get away with those crimes. How many Republicans have been held accountable for their crimes? Matt Gaetz, for example, very few, maybe George Santos. Yeah. So it actually, when you look at it as a whole, it does look political. It looks wrong. It just looks wrong.
Yeah. I mean, I know I've heard, maybe they couldn't prove he didn't know she was, underage but I'm like, man, we just said, with all the evidence we've seen, I'm like, man, Seems
And
like
Steph, with sworn
Yeah.
testimony from both the victim and an eyewitness
Yeah.
to the underage sex,
Yeah.
and hard evidence records, payment records, Venmo records, $10,000 paying pretty transparently
Yeah.
for sex. Really, we don't have enough evidence to indict him for that?
And, and here's the thing. I understand that it's not Merrick Garland alone, but the fact that somebody who tried to overthrow the United States government and stole our nuclear secrets is about to get the nuclear codes again. I'm sorry. It is just astounding. So do you have Pam Bondi? So let's move on to the next horror. Speaking of Mark Hamill, let's move on to the next seat in the Star Wars bar scene. Oh, hi, Pam Bondi. Yeah, here she is.
Something else that's going to happen, Sean, is when Republicans take back the White House, and we will be back in there in 18 months or less, you know what's going to happen? The Department of Justice, the prosecutors will be prosecuted, the bad ones. The investigators will be investigated because the deep state, last term for President Trump, they were hiding in the shadows. But now they have a spotlight on them, and they can all be investigated, and the House needs to be cleaned out because now we know who most of them are. There's a record of it, and we can clean house next term, and that's what has to happen.
I mean, same marching orders, right? She'll do the same thing Gaetz would have done, just without being as rapey, I guess. But Matt McDermott tweeted,
That shows how low the bar is.
Matt tweeted, there's significant evidence suggests when Pam Bondi was Attorney General of California, she was bribed by Donald Trump to avoid an investigation into fraud at Trump University. I mean, no kidding, right? Let Epstein slide. Like, where else do we start here, right?
Yeah, I agree with Senator-elect Adam Schiff. There's going to need to be a robust investigation in anticipation of the confirmation hearings. And then they're going to have to grill her on all of those statements that, an example is the one you just played. It's so corrosive to the men and women of law enforcement. If they know, Steph, that once they're given an assignment to investigate suspected crime, if they know that when the next administration comes in, they're going to go after the folks who were assigned that investigation in good faith based on the evidence. I never experienced that in my 30 years as a federal prosecutor. If I got an assignment, never once did I think, well, if I carry out this righteous, lawful assignment, I may be persecuted by the incoming administration. Wouldn't that make all government, agents and officers and prosecutors think twice about whether they want to do that work? So when she makes statements like that, man, the senators are going to have to grill her during the confirmation hearings. And yes, I was anxious to see after Matt Gaetz dropped out, which I said from minute one he was never going to be confirmed. Who would come next? Because when Matt Whitaker was acting attorney general for a cup of coffee, we're like, who's coming next? And it was Bill Barr. We went from bad to worse. I only hope we haven't gone from bad to worse here.
Yeah, we only have frying pan and fire. There's no other settings.
Hey all, Glenn Kirschner here. I hope you'll join me on my new audio podcast, Justice Matters. I'll be using my 30 years as a federal prosecutor and Army JAG to unpack, break down, and explain the legal issues of the day, particularly where the legal intersects with the political. Please look for Justice Matters with Glenn Kirschner wherever you generally get your podcasts.